Okay, guys, so just to put things in perspective a bit, so I'm a Frenchman who has spent 11 years living in Russia. I do have Russian roots. I am fully fluent in Russian in both written and spoken form. I've lived in Moscow for about 5 years. I've lived in both Moscow and the countryside, including Siberia and the Russian Far East. And you can see a few, foreigners online boasting how good life is in Russia, saying it's basically paradise. And a lot of these videos are unbearable to me. They are all lies, propaganda, and knowing Russia, I know it's they're not telling the truth. Okay, they are selling their country, most likely services, to move to Russia, or they are getting paid by the government. I don't know, but this guy here seems somewhat genuine. I can feel he doesn't make things up. I can feel he is still, in the honeymoon. He doesn't know Russia yet, not well. He's still somewhat naive. So let's listen to him and see what he has to say about his life in Russia, or in Moscow, should I say. Of course, I'm gonna disagree a lot with him. So this is not, I have nothing against this guy. Okay, it seems to be a good guy, but I'm gonna disagree. So yeah, don't think because I disagree with him, I don't like this guy or something. It's not the case. Here we go.
Всем привет! Hello everybody, welcome from Moscow. Now today I want to talk about what's happening in the UK. I look at the news and I see the riots, the chaos, the disorder, how unhappy everybody is with the situation, no matter what side you're on. So that made me think about the...
So here, yeah guys, I do agree. The UK is a big mess now. So is France, so is Germany, so are the Netherlands now. And I think a lot of you will agree with that, The West is currently in a, let's say, tight spot, okay?
Reasons why I left the UK to come here for a better life. So what I'm going to do is give you my 5 main reasons that I came to Russia from the UK for a better life.
Okay.
Let's go. Now, as the boat Alina Bravo goes past us, could you please take a second to hit subscribe? It'll really help me out and help YouTube push the channel to more people.
It's a nice place, by the way, to go to have a walk in Moscow. You have to know Moscow is a very big city, a lot of traffic jams, a lot of crowds. It's pretty noisy as well. So yeah, you will need to take some time away from the crowds and the traffic jams and the concrete. In the multiple parks Moscow has to offer. And there are a lot of nice parks in Moscow, I have to say. It doesn't beat the countryside, of course, the mountains, the sea, but still there are a lot of, good parks in Moscow.
Okay, let's jump on the scooter, we'll head up the river a little bit and then we'll get into my first reason.
All right.
Okay, the first reason that I moved to Russia from the UK is law and order. Now, when I say law and order, what I mean is, in the UK, there just seems to be an undercurrent of bad behaviour. Whether it's the people going out getting drunk at the weekend and fighting in the street.
It's the same in the Russian countryside. People drink a lot and fight in the clubs, in the bars.
Whether it's the big cities where people are just stealing bikes in broad daylight without even a mask on because they know that even if they get caught, they'll get a slap on the wrist. They're not even really...
It's the same in the Russian countryside. He's talking about Moscow. No, he's not talking about Russia. This guy doesn't live in Russia. He lives in Moscow. That's a big difference, and Russians will know what I talk about, In the Russian Far East, for instance, okay, if you own a expensive car or a fancy car, a garage is a must-have. Otherwise, your car will disappear.
Going to get in much trouble. And at the moment in the UK, there seems to be a real big move.
And the same applies to equipment or, all the fancy stuff you may own. If you just leave it there, it will get stolen. Okay, so don't think, it's that safe. when it comes to your stuff in equipment. It's not true. I'm talking about Russia, not Moscow.
Movement of people deliberately causing disruption, not to the government, not to big business, but to the average person who works the job and they need to get to work. Look.
Well, if I were in your shoes, mate, I wouldn't criticize the government in Russia. Okay? Otherwise, you will get troubles, believe me.
Look at these people, these Just Stop Oil people, the people that wear the orange t-shirts. They've usually got like pink hair or something like that, no job, contribute nothing to society. And then they go and they link arms and they sit down in the middle of the road. Where the average person is trying to get to work, people are missing hospital appointments, people can't get to their job, people are maybe even going to a funeral and they can't move.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's the same in France and in other, Western countries. I understand that feeling. It's quite frustrating, and it doesn't happen in Moscow. Not to say, yeah.
Because what happens is the police, and I don't blame the police. I'm sure they've got their hands tied, but the police can't do anything about it. So they've got to stand by to make sure nobody gets frustrated and maybe takes their frustration out on these people who are sitting in the middle of the road, disrupting everything for everybody. And they make sure they're nice and safe, and they can do that for as long as they want.
Yeah, but in the UK, at least you can disagree with your government, okay? So I'm not saying it's all roses there as well. I'm not, UK citizen. I've never lived there or worked there. But at least you can, you can stand up. You can disagree with your government. Try that in Russia, you will see. You will pay the price big time, mate.
Now, in Russia, we don't have that. Okay.
So of course, some will argue and say, yeah, but he is a foreigner. He has to respect the country. He does respect the country, but he has to respect the government. Okay, I get that. But try as a Russian citizen to talk against Putin or the government. You will see what will happen to you.
You're not allowed to just come and disrupt the lives of other people. In fact, in Russia, what I see is people are very, very, even whether it's just sitting on the metro, being quiet, not talking too loud, people are very, very careful.
In Moscow, not in Russia, mate, okay? The countryside is a big mess. And it's not that, civilized either, People can be very rude. You're talking about Moscow, not about Russia. Sorry, but don't get me wrong, but you don't know Russia, you know Moscow only. And you guys online, all these YouTubers, are always showing, the nicest place of Moscow. But you don't know much about what's happening in the countryside, in Siberia, in the Russian Far East. I've lived in Siberia. I've lived in Vladivostok. And I'm fully fluent in Russian. So I can read and I can understand what people say, what people talk online. You know the difference?
Not to disrupt the lives of other people. Now just look how peaceful this place is.
It is. Nice walk.
Now I could talk at great length, but that is my first reason. Law and order.
Yeah, fair enough. As long as you don't disagree with the government, the current government, because governments don't last forever, you're fine in Russia. Or in Moscow, sorry. I made a mistake. You're fine in Moscow, okay? I'm gonna stress this a lot because in the countryside, it's not really the case. And some YouTubers know what they talk about, such as Bald and Bankrupt, Sabbatical. I'm a YouTuber as well. And anyway, more on that later on.
Okay, I came a little bit further up the river to give you my second point. My second point and why I've moved to Russia for a better life is everything just works.
In Moscow. Yeah, in Moscow everything works. Everything is very efficient and fast. That's true. In Moscow, not in Russia, mate.
Whether it's the metro coming every minute in the morning, whether it's the roads that you drive on.
So about the metro, yeah. The metro of Moscow is probably one of the best subways in the world. Very fast, efficient, Very big, very good metro. And public transportation in Moscow, again, is very good. It's cheap, it's efficient, and you can go everywhere without a car, which is a good thing because you wouldn't want to own a car in Moscow. I've experienced it, driving a car in Moscow, it's a pain, too many traffic jams, and anyway, in Moscow, having a car is more about, status than practicity, okay? But yeah, public transportation in Moscow is very good. True.
With no potholes.
Okay, so this one is the one I can swallow, okay? The roads in Russia are terrible. You are talking about Moscow, okay? Come to the countryside and you will see how the roads are, okay? A lot of potholes, a lot of destroyed roads. I have broken rims multiple times. I have broken cars multiple times because of the bad roads, okay? And let's talk about the accidents as well, A lot of accidents happen in Russia on the roads. Roads in Russia are very dangerous, It doesn't even compare to the Western world, where people tend to be, quite civilized, behind their steering wheel. In Russia, no. In Russia, people drive drunk often. They drive too fast. The roads are shit. They don't give a fuck. There are a lot of accidents happening in the countryside with kids, who die on the roads because of, crazy drivers. So no, I can buy this one. It's not true, man. Sorry. This is no hating. This is true when it comes to Moscow, but in the countryside, no. The roads are not good and not safe.
No hole, smooth, relayed every year or two.
In
Whether
Moscow,
it's the banking system that if I need to send money to a friend, all I need to do is type in his phone number and go straight to his account.
That's true again. Very fast. But the West is getting better, when it comes to sending money quickly. Okay, here in France, for example, I can send money to everybody very quickly. It happens in a snap of a finger. But it was already the case in Russia 15 years ago. So yeah, it's good. It's good and it's true what he's saying.
Where in the UK you've got to jump through all sorts of loops just to set up one payment.
I don't
if
know
you've
about the
ever
UK.
tried to take a train regularly in the UK, it will first of all cost you an absolute fortune, even if you're buying a monthly ticket. So people going to work, it's cost them an absolute fortune. Then the train, for whatever reason, just won't arrive. There'll be no refund on that ticket. There'll be absolutely no apology from the company. It'll just be, who cares, we've got your money. No.
That reminds me France a lot, it's the same in France. Public transportation is quite expensive, not reliable, sometimes even decaying, depending where you go, which train you take. But how much do people make in the UK on average, okay? In Russia, people don't make that much. For example, in Moscow, 100 up to 150k rubles a month, so that's roughly 1,000, 1,500 euros a month, is considered a pretty good salary in Moscow, okay, for locals. In the countryside, I know what the salaries are, it's between 25 up to 40,000 on average. So that's roughly 300 pounds to live every month, okay? People are poor. A lot of people are poor in Russia. Way more than in the West. So it's expensive in the West, but still you make more. In Russia, everything seems so cheap because you are, maybe, I don't know, making pounds, you are making USD, you are making euro. So your buying power is way stronger than the Russians, on average, of course. Okay, there are Russian oligarchs and very rich people in Russia, I get that. But most people make low salaries in Russia still. So, of course, being a Westerner in Russia earning euros is a flex. I've been there as well, I've lived on Western money for years in Russia, so I know it. When you are Westerner making euros, making a good Western salary, you are the king there. I know it, but it's not the case for the locals, mate.
I know I live in Moscow, I know I live in a huge city, and this isn't going to be the same for all the villages and towns throughout Russia, but the channel is called Scottish Guy in Moscow, so
yeah, you should stress this more often, okay? You are talking about Moscow, but you are not talking about Russia. You don't know much about Russia. I can feel it, I can hear it, I can see it. You talk about Moscow.
Hint is there, I'm talking about Moscow.
Yeah.
Everything else, like the scooters, the bikes, the cars that you can just jump in to pay on the app, everything just works. There's never...
That's true again. Very convenient city. You don't need a car. Everything is cheap and efficient when it comes to public transportation.
Any problems with it. For that reason, Russia is so far ahead of the UK.
No, you should say Moscow is so far away ahead of the UK countryside. Nuance.
So far. Okay, number 3 of one of the reasons why I moved to Russia from the UK for a better life, and that would be taxation. Now, I've said it in my other videos before, I am a school teacher. So a school teacher in the UK, the salary is probably a little bit...
Most likely an English teacher. I don't know, but most likely.
Above average, okay? If you take the average salary, school teacher's going to be getting paid a little bit more than that. The top end of a school teacher's salary is going to be taxed at 46%. So
that's a lot, you know, and I have to agree, here in the West we pay way too much taxes. Taxes are too high, especially if you are a small freelancer, a small entrepreneur. You need to get ahead. You pay already a lot of taxes, and it gets even worse once you hit the 6-figure mark. Then you have to leave your country, otherwise you pay, for example, here in France, you pay 70-80% of what you're making in taxes. It's insane. And a good reason to leave the West, I think, in 2024, 2025. Taxes are simply too high. With the rising cost of living, yeah, there isn't much left to save or to invest.
Someone who's slightly above average.
But there are a few nuances still when it comes to Russia. Listen to this.
The government are going to take 46% from them. Now you might think, well, 46% high taxes means a good standard of living. But that person who's getting taxed 46% is going to call up their doctor to try and get an appointment on the NHS. They're going to be told that there's no appointments available. So you're paying 46%, you can't get an appointment with a doctor. The roads are going to have potholes in them.
Okay, I get it, but what about the quality of the services, okay? I'm talking about Russia, not Moscow, okay? In Moscow you can find good hospitals, even though I've had some bad experiences in Moscow. It was a long time ago, 10, 12 years ago. It is true here, for example, in France, if you want to make an appointment, it can take a month to get an appointment. I understand it. But what about the quality of the service, the quality of the doctors, okay? In some places in Russia, believe me, it's third world standards, okay? You rather stay at home than go to the doctor. You know what I'm saying? So I'm not saying it's always that way. It really depends. Some hospitals are of good standard, some aren't. But still, in Russia, you should be careful and always ask Russian people, local people, which doctor you can trust, which hospitals are good. Otherwise, you can have some surprises you don't want to experience, mate. And now you're talking about the roads and the potholes. That's not true, mate. That's complete nonsense. In Russia, in the countryside, I mean, again, not Moscow, the roads are not good. Okay, they are not well maintained, or they are poorly maintained, and the asphalt fades away very quickly, and people drive like crazy. Be careful if you drive in Russia.
There's going to be graffiti and trash everywhere, and crime is going to be rampant.
That's true. Crime is rampant in the West, and in Moscow, or even in the countryside, I have to say, you most likely won't have any problems, you know, with migrants wanted to stabbing you, or no. Overall, the country is safe when it comes to the insecurity problems we've got here in the West. You can walk alone at night. A woman can walk alone. She probably won't have any problem whatsoever. It happens still, don't get me wrong, you know, it's not all roses either, but still, it's compared to the West, Russia is on average a safe country when it comes to crime and even petty crime. Okay, I'm not saying it doesn't happen. It happens. You can get your car stolen in the countryside. You can get stabbed, of course. It happens, but way less often than in France or the UK or in Germany in 2024. That's true.
To put that into perspective, here I pay 13%, 1-3 on a higher salary, would you believe it?
No, I don't believe that, because if you're paying 13%, 13% taxes on your salary, it tells me you're not making that much, okay? You pay this amount if you make up to, if I'm not mistaken, 2,400,000 per year, which is roughly 22,000 euros per year, which is a small salary in the West and a small salary in Moscow. Okay, so for locals it isn't, but if you want to live to enjoy a European lifestyle, okay, buy a house or a nice apartment, not live somewhere very remotely, you know, in Jopemire, you know, I mean in the somewhere far away. If you want to own a car, a nice car, if you want to go out often, travel a lot, have a family, 22,000 euros per year is not enough. It's not a high salary. It's an okay salary. It's even a good salary for most Russians in Moscow, but it is not a high salary. Okay, it's not something. For example, I wouldn't want to move to even to Russia, let alone to Moscow for 22,000 per year. Okay, when I moved to Moscow in 2012, I made way more than that. Over 3 times what you are making now, okay? And I didn't feel rich either, no? I didn't feel rich. I mean, I was doing okay, I was saving money, but I wasn't rich, okay? If you want to live let's say the American dream in Russia, you need way more. So this is not a high salary, okay? And by the way, if you're making more than the not even 22,000 euros per year, you will pay even. Depending how much you make, you know, the tax brackets are different depending how much you make, but you're paying 15 or even 18%, which is still low compared to the West. That's true, but it is not 13%. It's even more. Okay. By the way, you can even pay less in Russia if you want to, if you own your own small company, if you are a freelancer. They call it a e-pay in Russia, and you can pay 15 or depending which regime you choose, even 6%. Which is very low. If you make money locally, if you make money in the West, then you will be paying 13, 15 or 18% depending on what you make. But it is not a high salary, mate, okay? I understand maybe you're single, you're young. For you it's enough, and it's definitely enough to live in Russia, especially in Moscow, to get by, okay? But it's not that much. If you want a family, if you want a nice car, a nice house, if you want, live by European standards, it's not enough, mate.
3%.
Because Russia is not that cheap as people say. It's cheap if you live a very simple lifestyle. Okay, you live in a small apartment, don't own a car, don't travel a lot. Yeah, then it's cheap. But once you want a family, you want to drive a powerful sports car, you want a big house, you want to travel a lot, it's almost the same as the West. Okay, because most what you are consuming is imported, and imported products are expensive in Russia.
For that, where I live, there's going to be no crime. You can leave your bike, you can leave your scooter.
In Moscow, leave your fancy car in the street for one night in the Russian Far East and it will disappear. Maybe not in the first night, but after 2-3 nights, your car will be gone. Everybody knows that in the Russian Far East.
If you drive or you take a taxi, you're not going to be bumping up and down on the potholes because there are none.
There are none. No. There are plenty. Way more than in the West, mate. Sorry to stress it again, but the roads in the countryside are very bad on average, okay? Only the so-called federal roads are okay, because that's how, they cities, reach each other, through, the trucks have to, to provide the smaller cities with goods. So these roads are usually okay, but Other roads are catastrophic.
Because the roads get relaid constantly. Everything is going to be clean. As I mentioned in my last point, everything is going to work.
Moscow is usually very clean and well maintained city, I have to say. And to be honest, even smaller cities, such as Vladivostok, Irkutsk, Novosibirsk, are usually well maintained. You know, they are clean, they are well maintained, and inside the cities, the roads are still okay. And yeah, it's overall, you know, a nice place to be, to walk around and so on. But once you move out to the countryside, then it's third world.
And you're paying, what, a third of the tax that I would be paying in the UK?
That's true.
So that's my third point, taxation.
But yeah, overall you will pay less taxes in Russia than in the West. That's for sure.
Okay, point number 4. What?
Because if you work locally, you will most likely make way less. Again, it's easy to flex, it's easy to boast how great Russia is if you make USDs, euros, pounds, Australian dollars, Swiss francs, and you make a good Western income and move to Russia. Then, of course, it's the great life because everything is cheaper. Not always the case, depending what kind of stuff you consume. But on average, let's say it's cheaper. Yeah, of course, life is great because everything is cheaper for you, but not for the Russians. Okay, for most Russians, Russia is not cheap.
Why I decided to come to Russia for a better life would be immigration. Now, you might think, how can you have a problem with immigration in the UK if you are an immigrant to Russia? Well, here's my reasoning. In order for me to come to Russia, I have to have a job.
Makes sense. Don't move to Russia, guys, without a job. Okay, unless you are fully fluent in Russian and you are able, or you are eager to get a pay cut, a huge pay cut. Come to Russia with a job and try to earn, strong currencies. Otherwise, you will maybe making peanuts, or you won't find a job either whatsoever because you don't speak Russian. You need to speak Russian in Russia, unless you are an English teacher, of course.
I have to pass a criminal record check.
Makes
I have
sense.
to have an HIV check.
Makes sense.
I have to have a drug test.
Makes sense.
An HIV and the drug test is every year. And
Not
if
always.
I fail any of
Not always, depending on which visa or residency permit you're on. But anyway,
those things, then I'll be asked to leave, or more so told to leave.
which is normal.
I also have to be paying tax. I have to be contributing
Of course.
to the society. I have to come here and I can't start telling everybody that they're living wrong and the way that I live is better and they should change
Of course, when it comes to the culture, okay, you have to respect the local culture.
their culture that they've had for hundreds and thousands of years.
But when it comes to, for example, productivity, war culture, and so on, I think Russia still has a lot to learn from the West. Okay, when it comes to efficiency, for example, doing a work accurately, providing good service. Russia still has a lot to learn from the West. I'm not talking about the culture. We shouldn't change the culture, of course, of the country, but still, there are some things in Russia that have to be improved still. It will be better for Russia. I don't care. It's for Russia. If Russia wants to improve and become, a very real superpower, it still has to learn a lot from the West.
When I come to the border, usually I'll be kept there with many other foreigners. I'll be questioned by the border police what I'm doing there, who's my family, what.
I don't like that, mate. It doesn't sound like a free country to me.
Okay. What do they do? What is my history? Because Russia want to protect their borders.
Yeah, but shit still happens. Look at what happened, in at the Crocus department store. What happened in February or in March, if I'm not mistaken. Okay, shit still happens. And don't tell me we Europeans, I'm gonna mess up Russia. Okay, especially if you made the choice to move to Russia. We are not the ones who are gonna make some trouble in Russia. Okay, you know what I'm talking about.
So, number 4. That's my reasoning.
Especially if you love Russia, especially if you speak the language, you should be no. The country should be happy to accept us in their country. Okay, but it's not always the case. Ask Balding Bankrupt. Ask Sabbatical, the YouTuber. Okay, I was questioned in the Russian Far East. They told me, "What are you doing here?" Okay, everybody wants to leave this place, and you're gonna tell me, you as a Frenchman, you'd rather stay here than in France? What's wrong with you? There's something wrong here. You know what I'm talking about? So be careful, guys. Maybe you should you should wait for the end of the war.
Okay, now for my 5th and final reason why I came to Russia for a better life. And for me, I believe that in Russia, common sense just prevails. If you look at the Olympics...
No. Even in the Russian culture, the Russian culture is very superstitious, okay? You have to know. It's a part of their culture. I'm not saying it is good or bad, it's just the way it is. So, no. Common sense doesn't always prevail.
Now, I don't watch a lot of the Olympics, but I did see in the news, I think it was an Italian boxer, female boxer. She's trained her whole life. Her parents probably took her to training as a little girl. They probably travelled to competitions, paid lots of money for training. And she finally gets to the Olympic Games. It's her dream. And what do? Well, they put her in there with someone who, biologically, isn't a female. And of course, this person lands...
We all get what he's saying here, okay? I don't have any proof, so I'm not gonna comment this. I don't have the proof of it, But we understand, his point.
Much heavier punches.
But still, is treating the West with a nuclear bomb common sense? I don't think so. Tell me in the comment below what you guys think, If you send nuclear bombs to the West, you will most likely receive, get yourself nuclear bombs as well on your capital, on your country. So it's not common sense at all. Okay, nuclear war doesn't make sense. So why treat the West constantly with nuclear bombs? Because it doesn't make sense. If you kill the West, you kill yourself. Know what I'm saying?
And she had to quit. Is that right? Who am I to say what's right and wrong? And I don't ask anyone else to believe what I believe. But I don't think that's fair. Now, what's that got to do with the UK? Because the UK wasn't involved. What I'm saying is, that sort of thing would never happen in Russia. But in the UK...
Is invading your neighbor country fair or not? I don't think so. You're talking about common sense, mate. So
people are either too scared to say they think it's wrong, or...
because Russian people aren't scared now. What do you think? Honestly. I don't know. Maybe 50-50. But a lot of them don't agree with the current government. They don't agree with the current politics. But they can't talk. They can't speak out. Not just because they are scared, but because they will end up in jail if they do. You know what I'm saying?
I think that's it. In the UK, you can't say that you don't think that's right, or you get called all sorts of names.
Yeah, in the UK, you get called, all sort of names, as you're saying. In France, it's the same. In Germany, the same. But in Russia, you end up in jail. Let that sink in a bit, mate. not saying the West is perfect. The West has a myriad of problems, but don't tell me, when it comes to freedom of speech and overall freedom, Russia is better. No, it's worse at the moment. It could change, and I hope so, because I love Russia. I love Russia, but not for political reasons, okay? Because I have Russian roots, because I spend a lot of time there, because I can appreciate, what Russia has to offer, other than just politics.
So for me, around that sort of thing, common sense just prevails. I don't think it's fair on women.
Nah, I don't buy that. Not always. I get his point and the example he took to talk about common sense, but still, no.
What's happening? I certainly wouldn't want to have a daughter and bring them up to play sport for that to happen to them. So, that is my reason, number 5. Common sense prevails in Russia. Okay, that's about it. Now, of course, I could talk at great length about the low cost of living, how cheap...
No, the cost of living is not that low if you make a Russian salary. No matter where you are, in Moscow or in the Russian Far East or Siberia, it's low for you. Because you, maybe, I don't know, are making pounds, You have a stronger purchasing power, even though it turns out your salary isn't that high for Moscow at all, let me tell you, okay? And I really hope a real war between NATO and Russia won't break out. Because otherwise, if it breaks out, Moscow will be one of the worst, if not the worst place to be. Anyway, take care. As I was saying, I have nothing against this guy, but I have to disagree with a lot of things he pointed out. And with my experience, as a Westerner who has lived in Russia for a long time, who is fully fluent in Russian, who has Russian roots, there are some things, I have to comment, because they're simply not true. Okay. Again, I don't think this guy is making things up. Okay. I think he's just in his honeymoon. He doesn't know Russia yet, not well. So that's why he's talking that way. But we'll see in 10-15 years. Probably his mind will have changed a bit. Anyway, comment below, guys. Tell me what you think about all what he is saying and what I commented about this video. And smash the like button. Don't forget to subscribe, share, comment below. Check the links below in the description, and talk to you soon. Have a good one.